Hi, everyone. Thank you for signing up for this webinar. Today we're talking about building confidence and mental toughness for a successful 2018. When I think about topics for these webinars, I think about different things that are going on with my clients and different questions that people are asking and issues that people are having and limiters. So a big one has been really all the time, mental toughness and how you can try to keep your brain out of the way of your training and your success. So I also have a special guest today. So Nate Last is going to be helping me with this webinar and actually doing a lot of the talking today. He's from Mental Grit Consulting. Nate, do you want to talk a little bit about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm happy to be on here today, and thanks everyone for joining. The mental skills side of thing, or the mental game, is so impactful to sports and performance. I personally was a lacrosse player in collegiate lacrosse at the University of Utah, and never understood that there was such a huge aspect of the game that I didn't know, which was the mental side, and it had a major impact on me inside of my collegiate career. To the point where actually when I started training the mental game and the mental side of performance, it skyrocketed everything that I was doing in my game, at school even, and even in my life, which was interesting. So that actually led me to completing my master's degree at the University of Utah within the psychosocial aspects of sports. That's the long name for sports psychology, or applied sports psychology. So studying actually it's really the study of success, or the science of success within performance and within athletics. So that's what led to Mental Grit Consulting, and wanted to bring mental skills training to the masses. It is really what I'm trying to do as a company, but moreover as a professional and as an athlete, to just give these these skills that people don't typically know about or don't really know what to do with, and help them develop the mental side of the game. That's as simple as that, and I hope to continue to bring that, hopefully alongside Sally Drake coaching as well, which is actually starting, or the introduction here. So, and Sally can talk to you guys a little bit more about that, but that's that for now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So, okay, let's have some fun. So on to the next slide. Let's see here. There we go. Let's see. Having a little technical difficulty here. Nothing new. Here we go. Okay. So I've said this before. I feel like this is something that I tell myself on race morning or the day before race when I'm preparing, but control what you can and accept what you cannot control. And if you remind yourself of that, sometimes it can take some of the stress out of and fear out of what's going to happen on race day, because there's some things you just can't do anything about. So try not to stress about them. And on all of these slides, Jennifer has put a lot of different visuals and quotes that are all very effective. I won't read them to you, but I would definitely recommend taking some time to read some of these quotes if that type of thing can motivate you and encourage you to change the way you think, possibly. So let's continue on that same topic, controlling what you can. And I just kind of came up with a few different aspects to this, to what you can control is your attitude to a certain degree. If you have a negative attitude, try to think about why you feel the way you do. Are you running late all the time? Are you not getting enough sleep, so it's making you not feel good and kind of crabby? Or do you not like morning? And that's when a lot of our workouts are. Maybe we need to talk about that and try to figure out a different option for you if it always puts you in a bad mood and affects your training. So, and I'll let Nate talk more about these bullets as well and anything else that he wants to add when I'm finished with this list. Preparation, follow the plan that your coach provides or that you're following if you have an online plan that you're using. Put in the training. The athletes that I have that do follow the plan and put in the training have much more success in their performance improvements and in their events. So eat healthy and sleep enough, just taking good care of yourself, keeping your stress at a low level if you can. However you can do that, will all contribute to being more prepared for workouts and for race day. Planning, obviously, if you have a good plan in place, it's going to take some of the stress away too. So planning your travels, even just planning your clothing the night before a workout. So every week you pretty much have the same schedule of your workouts and where you need to be. So just preparing by packing your clothes the night before so you're not running around crazy and running late. Little things like that can make a big difference in how you feel when you get to the workout. Visualization, I've talked about this a lot too. I'm really big on it. I've practiced it a lot on my own in my some of my bigger races, especially Ironman. But using visualization the day before the race, you can use it even the day before workouts, and it can really help. It can help with your attitude, and it can help you just set yourself up mentally for a great day. So it works, and I'm sure Nate could talk all day about this, but visualization is basically picturing the race day unfolding the way you want it to, and the way that you prepared for it to. So picturing success, and it can work. And then balance is another big one. So keeping your whole life in balance as much as possible. It's hard to do, especially for those of you who have a busy training schedule and you have a lot of training to fit in because you have aggressive goals, or you're doing your first Ironman or something like that, or you're trying to qualify for Kona. Those are really big goals. So sometimes that's all you can focus on, and other things in your life suffer. So, but you'll be a much happier person and successful athlete if you can keep some balance in your life, keep a social life, spend time with your family, manage your schedule so that you can do that. And keep in touch with me if you are having problems doing that, because I might be able to help you. You can be creative. So, and taking time off from training every once in a while just to kind of enjoy those things that we miss when we are training seriously all the time. Nate, do you want to add to this slide? I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Oh man, it's you start going down this any of these topics, and all of a sudden, blooms of ideas come through. But the first thing that I would want to add to this, and this is something that I always say and teach, is effort is going to be one of the biggest controllables that we could add to this list. Effort is the one thing that we have complete control over in all times, in all aspects of our lives, and we can choose to put effort towards or effort against anything. So that would be the only thing that I would add to this list. If you're gonna control any controllable, and that's kind of what we say in the field, is you got to control the controllables. You got to accept what you can't control, and you got to realize that when you're focusing and putting attention on things that you can't do anything about, you're stressing yourself out. I want to make that point right now, that a lot of the stress that you might be feeling, a lot of the anxiety that you might be feeling around race day, around training, around planning, around all of these different aspects of triathlon as a whole, comes from what you pay attention to, comes from what you focus on. If you're focusing on things that you can't do anything about, obviously that's going to cause stress. It's going to cause that feeling of unease, to say the least. So, whereas if you focus on things you can control, that you can do something about, you're always going to be able to make it a lot easier to perform. Your mind and your body are in the same, or in a proper place, or in a performance state, to say the least. The only other thing that I would add is to your explanation of visualization. I think this is such a major skill, and this is one of the most primary skills within what I teach and what I help athletes develop, and it is so difficult to master. The skill of visualization, and what I like to call it is called imagery, because we're not just implementing what we see, we actually implement what we hear and what we feel and what we smell and what we taste. into that image or into that thing or that movie that we're playing in our mind. However, having said that, some athletes have a really difficult time developing images in their head and playing it out and controlling those images. A lot of times those images can go down a route that is negative or debilitative or wrong in their opinion, right? Because they've gone through an experience and, they see themselves failing. So I will say that, yes, visualization is very important, but learn to control it. Learn to control the images that you're developing in your mind, and just 2 quick techniques that you can use. If you can't control the image that's going on in your head, or if you're not able to develop an image in your mind, see if you can write it down on paper, because you can control what you write. If you can follow that rule, make sure that you're utilizing paper and putting it down on paper and writing it out, and writing your story, because that gives you the power over the story as a whole. And then you can actually start recapping that story that you write down in your mind, and that's the right story that you're telling yourself now, and we can move forward from there. And the other thing that I would say as a technique when it comes to visualization, and more specifically imagery, is integrate all of the senses. Integrate everything that you feel in terms of physical touch, everything that you hear, everything that you see, everything that you smell, everything that you taste. Because all of those elements will create a more vivid image and a more impactful image for you. Last, and I always say this, there's one more thing, right? The last thing that I would always say here is that if you cannot control the image that's going on in your head, and it's going down a route of failure or a route of ineffectively doing the tasks that you're trying to visualize, stop visualizing. Don't do it. Start writing, because if you continue to image, or if you continue to visualize that task in a way of failure that results in what you don't want, your body will actually set itself up for doing exactly what it is you're imaging. That's the power of imagery, is we're able to prime ourselves. We're able to send signals to our muscles in the same exact way as if we were actually doing it, but we're just imagining it. So if we're doing it wrong, obviously we're negatively impacting ourselves, right? So keep that in mind, right? So the 3 things there: if you can't control the image, write it down. If you can't control the image and it's going down a negative route, stop imaging, right? And lastly, utilize those senses to create a more vivid and more impactful image. Specifically, and I would always recommend within transitions, that's one of the easier things that you can control, that the flow of, and that's always helpful.
All right. I love it. Thank you so much. This is fun. So fantastic. I love all the contributions that Nate is giving as an expert in this field that we're talking about. So the other side to this is accepting what you cannot control. So a few things that I thought of that are beyond our control: missed workouts at that point. At that point, when you're preparing for your race, you can't worry about the workouts that you missed in the past, right? All you can do is think about where you are now and what you're going to do to succeed. And then also, and on a weekly basis, missed workouts. Well, yeah, possibly we can make adjustments going forward into the following week or the following month. It just depends on the timing of it. But really, trying to cram it in to an already stressful life and a big day of work and another workout is just silly. So talk to me and make adjustments, right? And then also, for most of us, and this is easy for me to say because I know this is a really difficult thing for some people, and there will always be faster training buddies, faster athletes in your age group. Accept it and do what you can, and we're going to go more into this, but do what you can to have the best performance for you, and better than you did last time, or better than you did in that same race last year. That's absolutely something we're going to talk about more because it's a tough one. And then weather on race day. Yeah. Weather on race day. That's a big one too. Just planning, bringing everything you may need for that race, as far as apparel and And I always remind myself that everybody's in the same wind, everybody's in the same heat, everybody's in the same, they're all struggling in the same way, that, in a similar way that you are, depending on what the conditions are. So all you can do is be as prepared as possible. And I even have my athletes try to do some riding in the rain if it's safe enough, but ride in the rain so that you know what it's like. So on race day, you don't freak out because you've never done it before. So things like that. And Nate, do you want to talk?
Quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Ride in the wind.
Oh yeah.
I think it's so funny because it's a part of the game. It's a part of triathlon, and everybody has this like poopy attitude around wind, and it's like everybody's going through it though. Everybody's got, the only thing that you need to remember when it comes to training is that you can become anything you want to. If you hate the wind, you're right. You're gonna hate it. You're always gonna hate it. So go out maybe, and I'm gonna recommend this. If you're afraid of the wind, if you hate the wind, and if you identify yourself as not a good rider in the wind, which so many people do, give it acknowledge it, accept it. Okay, so you identify with that idea of, I'm not very good in the wind. Okay, that's fine. Go be a bad A in the wind, right? Go train yourself to be a great wind rider. By going and riding in the wind, right? And change your attitude about it, change your identity when it comes to these hard aspects. I love cold riding. I love it. I hated it about 5 years ago, right? But I love cold riding because now I can say I'm a good cold rider, and the only reason I can say that is because I've done it, right? So I would always say that. Especially with weather and if you identify with these things and say, oh, I'm not you are totally right. But you can change that. You can develop it. You can change the way you see yourself and and the way that you interact inside of those environments.
Yes, that's great. I know, and I like that idea of just turning it around and making yourself a bad A in whatever you think you're bad at, right?
Heck yeah. That's your call. It's your choice.
That's right. So this slide, little saying, it may be a quote that I've heard before, but it came into my head when I was putting the presentation together, is limit yourself or be limitless. So kind of like what Nate was just talking about. I mean, you can turn things around and take those things that you think, things that you think you're bad at, turn them around, or find ways to have the edge over other athletes. And you can do a lot of it with your mind and with your brain and your attitude. So definitely something to work on. And that's kind of what we're stressing here, is it's something that you can practice and train. Okay. So the next section of this presentation will be a lot of fun and great information. So I kind of came up with a list of different types of athletes, different types of issues that I've seen in my athletes that are, that they're setting themselves up. They kind of have a block. So it's a common theme in their training, in their worry, in their stress, and sometimes most times probably affects their success. So I wanted to talk about each type of athlete and have Nate offer his ideas on how he can help me help you. So a couple of the types of athletes are self-sabotage. So self-sabotage in training, on race day, something will go wrong and you just know it and you're setting yourself up, or you suck and you're just slow and you know it. So it's going to be a bad day. You're going to have people passing you all day long, and that's what goes through your head. So we need to figure out how to stop that, because it's definitely not a good place to be for an athlete. And this is a great slide with some more quotes and things like that I would recommend you go back and check out. More types of open water is a very common fear that is in triathlon. I mean, most triathletes, I would say, are afraid of the swim, and on race morning, when I ask around, most of them, their stress is based on the swim and what's going to happen in the swim, and are they going to drown, and are they going to get kicked? And it could be the water, it could be a fear of the fish. I don't know, but all different fears in open water. And we'll talk about that. I mean, obviously, again, we've talked about the fact that you need to prepare to try to eliminate those fears, but we'll go into some more detail. And then more types. You're overly competitive, out to smash the competition in everything you do. We could have a casual coffee shop ride and there's someone that's going to be racing it, but and that I'm thinking of the type of athlete that just can't relax and can't just go out on a group ride and ride with their friends who might be not quite as strong, but they want to hang out with their friends. But Joe's over there and they want to go try to keep up with Joe, because otherwise Joe's going to think that he's faster than they are, and we see it all the time. So, and also that fear of losing or being slower than that guy that, that we're talking about, that Joe guy. And then the athlete that feels like they're slower than everyone else. And maybe they're training with just the two people in their swim lane, but they say, oh my God, I'm so slow. Well, they might be the slowest person in the swim lane, but they chose to swim in the fast lane that day. And maybe that's when they go to the slower lane so that they'll be the first person in the slower lane. But it's a constant frustration of, I'm slower than everyone. So, and then the people who are just starting out, who are just not as strong in the swim or the bike or the run, and they find themselves in last place. So that type of person, what can they do to just hang in there, because it will get better, they will get stronger, and remind themselves that they can't forget where they started. Imagine where they'll be when they keep working on it, because we've all started somewhere, right? So that type of athlete too is a big one. Okay, so let's start with the first topic of self-sabotage. You are your worst enemy, and these are all great quotes as well. So just imagine how much you get done if you stopped actively sabotaging your own work. So it's getting in the way of yourself. Nate, do you want to talk about this one? He laughs.
Goodness. I feel like, I mean, you went through, 4 or 5 different personalities there, and gosh, we could spend the next days and days and days working through kind of what you can do in each of these elements. So, the one thing I kind of want to start out with is if you, kind of use these personalities as maybe a stick man, and, if you see any of these traits or these things, that we're talking about in yourself, I want you guys to know right now that's okay. It's not only okay, it's normal, completely and utterly normal, that athletes combat all of this stuff every darn day, right? Every freaking day they combat all of this crap that goes through their head that just doesn't matter. But because we're human and because we live in the society that we do, we put importance on the weirdest things. That don't support performance, that don't support us or help us in any way, shape, or form, which is kind of what we'll talk to here in just a second, kind of what those things might be. But this idea of self-sabotaging, if you know that you do this, do something about it, please. If you don't know that you do this, you can't really do anything about it. But if you know that you are telling yourself that you suck and you're gonna fail, you're right. You're so right. And it hurts you, and I want you to acknowledge that it hurts you, and we need to do something about it. And the one thing that I would want those people to do is I would want them to refocus on things that, and I want you to write these down actually. If you find yourself as self-sabotaging, if you find yourself telling yourself that things are going to go wrong before anything ever happens, I want you to write down right now, all the things that you think are going to go wrong. I want you to burn that damn paper, and then I want you to write down all the things that are going to go right, that are under your control, right? Take these controllables that we have just above in this list, right, and write down, a story where you're controlling these controllables and about things that are going to go right. It doesn't matter what they are, right? Just write something down. Tell yourself a different story, because if you continue to tell yourself the story of I suck, I'm not going to, do well, I'm going to fail, I'm going to get past, I'm going to drown in the swim. Heard that so many times, it's crazy.
Yeah.
If you continue to tell yourself that story, you're right. That's all I'm going to say. And that's just going to cause so much stress, so much anxiety. You're going to go through the situation, and you're just going to be stiff as a board, because you're so freaking stressed out, that you can't perform and you can't move forward. So that would be the one thing that I would say, is acknowledge the fact that you're a self-sabotage, or that you're doing these things that self-sabotage or sabotage your race before they even happen. And I guarantee this, actually, if you're doing this in race day or doing this in triathlon, you also do it during your family life, or within your work life as well, right? So just, if you see yourself doing this, that's okay. It's fine, right? There's so many athletes to do it. I do it sometimes, and I have to catch myself. But if you find yourself if you say things before they're happening, if you make decisions about things before they even occur, especially negatively, then you need to do something about it. So start writing those things down. Start writing them down, and then when you get a good list, burn them, because they don't matter, they don't exist, and then start writing a different story. But you do have to go through some work here, and I think I want to make that really evident right now. And when it comes to the mental side of things, it's not good enough just to say it. I like to say, ink it, don't think it. Put it down on paper. Do some work. Do a little bit of engagement, or have a little bit of engagement in this thing that you want to change, or this thing that that's hurting you, and move and do something that will help rather than hurt. Right? So that's a big part of what I do as a coach is I help people acknowledge and develop an understanding of what they're doing that's not helping them. And then help provide them some guidance or some facilitation on what they can do, or what they can put their attention on, or how to what's the different story that they write, in order to kind of rehash their beliefs, their identities, their these things that come up inside of the game. But I will make it very apparent, if you're doing these things to yourself, do something about it. If you know that you're doing these things yourself, you've got to do something about it, because you're never going to be able to reach your full potential doing these things. I'm going to kind of leave it at that, because there's so many other things that we could talk about. But what are your thoughts? Sally, have you ever helped somebody with this at this point? What do you do?
Yeah. So I find, and I loved how you said, ink it, don't think it. So when you have these different, the self-sabotage going on, where you're constantly putting yourself down and losing motivation and suffering because of it, let me know. You write it down. So like Nate said, ink it, write it down, log it in your workout. What's going on? You didn't have a good workout because you went into it thinking that you weren't going to have a good workout, or things like that. Because I find that, people are used to thinking this way. They don't realize.
Agreed. Yes.
They don't realize that they can do something about it. But it's just like in your training, what do we do if you're a weak cyclist and you have a big race coming up that's a hilly bike ride? We focus on it. We put you on hills. We give you a lot of volume on the bike. We do that. This type of self-sabotage, this is definitely a limiter and a weakness. So recognize it. Let me help you. If I personally can't help you and can't figure out the answer, then we have great resources like Nate. So just like you go to a chiropractor if your back hurts, or you go to, your sports doctor if you have some kind of injury coming on. Think about it that way. Use your resources and let's figure these things out, because that can really limit you, make you miserable too, right?
Absolutely. And just, I do want to make a couple of big points here. When it comes to this webinar specifically, and all of the things that you could work on, I think this is fun. We have 1,000 things that we already need to work on, and we add on this whole mental side. Like, what the heck?
Right.
that could stress some people out. So I will say right now that, I mean, if you do see something inside the mental game that you feel like you would need to work on, pick one and figure that one out, right? And work on that one, because when you work on one and you get better at that one thing, you're going to get better at the other things as well. But don't play the game, and I hate the word don't, because it makes us focus on what we don't want to do rather than what we do want to do. So let me rehash that, right? When it comes to, rather than focusing on 1,000 things, focus on one thing. Because when you, again, increase that one thing, or increase your capacity or your ability or your skill inside of that one thing, you're going to get better at other things as well because of that one thing, right? It's a big focus, a trap within athletics to have all of these things that we need to work on. We think that we need to get better at all of them all at once. And that way, then we go into practice and training and we don't focus on any one thing, and then we leave training and practice and we realize, hey, we didn't really get anything out of that day. So I would say, focus on one thing. Find one thing that you need to work on within each domain, like whether it be strength or technique on the bike or swim, whatever you're focusing on that one day, make sure that you focus in on one specific thing rather than 1,000 things. And the other thing I was going to say here, it just reminded me, realize now that mental skills training is, as a sports psych, as a mental skills trainer, you can kind of think like, oh, he works with athletes with problems. I mean, that's such bull crap. I hear that and I'm like, I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't work with issues. I don't work with disorder. I work with potential. I work with opportunity. And I want you guys to hear that right now. I mean, mental skills training, and this is the stuff that Olympians use in order to optimize their potential for, the Olympics. You've got to get, in your head that just because these things are happening to you, it means that you have a problem. And it's just like, that's crap. You just have so much opportunity, because if you fixed, or if you developed, or, optimized this one specific skill set, then you're going to be so much better. And that's what potential is all about, rather than fixing problems and issues. I think that's such a stupid way to think about things. Sorry if I offended anybody in that statement, but that's just my opinion there.
No, I like it. Thinking of it, it's not an issue, it's an opportunity. There are opportunities in every area to get better. And so I like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. So thank you.
Woo, okay, so one down, five to go. What are our next thoughts here?
Woo! And then, okay, the next one is about injury woes. This slide went a little wonky. I thought I fixed it. But anyway, injuries. So obviously this can really get to you mentally when you have something that hurts, or something that's injured and limiting you, and you can't go for your run, or you can't swim because of your shoulder, and your doctor tells you to take a week off or a month off, or, oh my gosh, what's that going to do for your race in the spring? What are you going to do? And it feels like you're the only injured person out there, and you're never going to get past this. And this is very common. Not that injuries are very common, but, we all have those little weird things going on here and there. And a couple people, go through injuries. And we have an injury prevention workshop coming up. But how to stay positive through this and know that this too shall pass. I mean, given my experience, I know that, if I do the right things and I pay attention to the injury and do what I can to take care of it, that it's going to get better, and it will pass, and I will be back on track again. And sometimes you think, well, it's probably good, I think, just to make myself feel better. Well, it's good that I'm resting now, because there were probably other things that were going on in my body that could be healing now too, and I'll come out of the gate super strong and fresh, and use that time for other things, maybe working on the mental side of training. But yeah,
goodness, crazy.
Yeah. Can you imagine? So go ahead, Nate. What do you have? What kind of suggestions do you have for people who are going through this injury, or what to do when they're on the bench?
Yeah. Okay. So again, massive, massive, massive topic. But at the same time, there's a few things that I would say to this. So one big thing here, first of all, I broke both of my ankles and blew my ACL in collegiate lacrosse.
Oh,
Coming back from those injuries, those are major injuries, right? And coming back from them was the hardest thing that I've ever done, which is actually a big proponent of why I started working with a sports psych. Them helping me come back for it. And one of the biggest things that I got out of, working with the sports psych in injury, was the realization that all of the stress, all of the negativity and the fear and all of the, the anxiety that comes with injury, all of that came from this outcome that I had in my mind continuously changing. I had it in my head that I was going to be, senior leader in my freshman year. And as soon as I blew my ACL, those dreams were gone.
wow.
And I couldn't believe it. And the coach that I was working with in performance psych told me the one thing that I needed to work on, if I was going to be a great athlete, if I was going to be a great performer, I needed to learn how to be okay with dynamic outcomes and focus on, rather than those outcomes, on the things that I can do to achieve the things I want in the moment, rather than having this idealistic dream of what I want and then having that outcome change. And then I was devastated. It was like, so really one of the big things that I want you guys to understand when it comes to injury is that you do need to learn that athletics is dynamic, that athletics changes all the freaking time. The finish line changes every day. When you get injured, that finish line is going to be more about, making sure that you're optimizing and you're recovering as best as you possibly can be. And that becomes the new outcome that you're working towards. When you're recovered, when you're, back, ready to rock and roll, your outcome then, changes to be some specific race or possibly even a specific training week. I like to think of my weeks and, or my training blocks in 4-week stages. And I don't go any further than that when it comes to what I focus on, because the more I focus on, okay, I'm going to achieve this race and I'm going to do it in this way and I'm going to have this time and this, that, and the other, the more solidified that outcome becomes. And then all of a sudden something changes that affects that outcome and I get all stressed out. Like, well, what if this, that, and the other? And it's like, that doesn't matter. So if you're going to be a great athlete, if you want to train your focus and your attention and the best thing that you can do right now in any way, shape, or form is put your focus and attention on the things that are going to help you get what you want now rather than in the future. That is very vague, I know. That is very, oh man, what does that actually mean? But what are your thoughts? I mean, bounce some ideas off of me here. Is this clear? Is this coming across all right? What are your thoughts yourself?
Yeah, it is to me. I mean, I think, rather than focusing on what's going wrong, focusing on how you can use it to your benefit. So another piece of it, I think, is thinking of the injury again as another way to improve. Well, I have, let's say, plantar in my foot. What is really causing that plantar, and reaching out to specialists and tackling the problem and using it. I mean, that's a part of the sport, is things will go wrong. We're pushing ourselves sometimes to our limits and beyond our limits. And so things will go wrong. And it does happen to all of us. We'll go through something. I'm sorry, but it just it's just true.
Oh,
And
without a doubt.
yeah, but find out what the reason is. I mean, maybe because the reason you're having a plantar problem is something that's going on in your hip, but going to the specialist and trying not to just push through it, and absolutely communicating with your coach and saying, this is starting to hurt. It hurt in my last run. It hurt in the run today. I'm not sure if it's anything big, but and we can talk about it. We can figure out, well, maybe you should go see this chiropractor or this doctor, or you should ice it and see if it goes away. We talk about it and try to solve the problem before it becomes a bigger issue. But yeah, don't,
absolutely.
don't avoid it. And if it does turn into something that forces you to take time off, well, it's just one of those things. You just have to have patience.
Absolutely. And,
right?
and just like you said, I mean, if you do have to take time off, use it. What can you do, even after you have to take time off, what can you do in that moment, right, in that present moment, that can help you get better? Well, go do some, mental skills training. Go read a freaking book. Go, get some more knowledge about the sport that you're trying to be better at, right? Go develop yourself in other ways, because there are so many different things that you can do. And it all comes back down to that whole point of focus on what's going on right now rather than on what you want in the future. And that goes for training, that goes for racing, that goes for injury mitigation, that goes for dealing with injury. That is the quintessential skill right there for performance, is being able to focus on what's happening now in order to get what you want, right? Rather than, putting all of your attention and focus on what you want, and never, doing the things that you need to do to get there. That is a very hard thing to do. I will say that's easy to say, to focus on, what's happening now, because what's happening now is work. And it's tough, and it's pain, and it's kind of you have to deal with things, and you have to accept things. But when you think in the future, it's funny because they're just thoughts, and they're easy. They're easy to come up with. Oh, these are the things I'm going to get, and these are the things that I want, and you can create them in your mind. And oh man, it's so easy. But training yourself and knowing when you're too focused on those outcomes, and realizing it, and then bringing yourself back to the present moment. And focusing on what you're doing, making it happen right now in order to get those things. That's the hard part, but that's the training as well. That's the data space, mental, flexing that mental muscle, right? Bringing yourself back to the present moment and doing the work.
Yep. No, I like it. I think those are great points and tips that we can all use for sure. So it's a tough one. Open water fear. Very, very common, which I know we could talk all day about this too, but my biggest tip on this and my approach to clients that have an open water fear is, don't laugh at it. Don't take it lightly. It's very serious. Sometimes it's because of an experience in their childhood. And sometimes it truly is a fear of drowning. Sometimes it's a fear of touching the bottom and something silly like the fish or something like that, which, to me it's silly, but to the person who's really afraid of the shark or something, it's not silly at all. It's very real. And this can cause an athlete to lose sleep, to be very sick. I've had athletes physically sick because of thinking about their open water race the next day. And had stories of panic, and it probably has happened to a few athletes where they have to be picked up by a boat and taken in to the shore because they just can't, they don't want to.
Absolutely.
So it's really scary. And so what I do with athletes who have that fear is swim with them, or find one of my experienced athletes. If I can't do it that day, one of my experienced athletes to swim next to them if they're at that point where they can get in open water. And if they're not, then we work on a lot of different open water skills in the pool. And then if we go to an open water swim, we stay in close to the shore, whatever it takes, or I'll be next to them on my paddleboard and talk them through, okay, when they come up, and maybe this is something too an athlete could do, is like when you stop swimming and bring your head up and float on your back, what is going through your head? What are you afraid of? Or did you just, sometimes I'll have athletes who are experienced and they'll just set into a panic will just set in. And my biggest tip on that is, okay, if you've had that happen, then you need to figure out how you're going to deal with it because it's very scary. Figure out the self-talk that will help you get through that. It's happened before. Here it's happening again. What do I need to do? I know I can do this. I know I can do this, you know? So,
Yep.
yeah, those are just some of the things that I've worked with people on, is just getting through it. And the more experience they have, the better it gets. And we usually have success, but I've had people where it's taken years. It's taken a few years before they can really do an open water race, you know? So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, the whole open water thing is actually something that I had an issue with when I first began triathlon. Just what, 25? Well, I first began about 4 years ago. But really got into the half Ironman training over the last 20 months here, and I ended up doing 8 half Ironmans and one full Ironman, and one of those half Ironmans was open ocean. And that was like, whoo, talk about, a fear complex.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot going through that, and there's a couple of things that I kind of point out. I would like to say though that your technique and just tactic of exposure, just like we talked about, if you're afraid of the wind, go get in the wind, and make yourself a person that does that, that goes after it. Get more exposure to it. Put yourself in a safe situation where you're able to practice, being in open water. But if you're afraid of it, you have to face it. I mean, it's not going to go away. It's going to be there on race day. I promise you that, right? So if you're afraid of the water, if you want to do open water swimming, then go do open water swimming. Get some people around you that are going to be helpful to support you, whether that having boats around you or having paddle boards around you, or even just a simple swim buoy, and go get a swim buoy. That's one of the best things that I ever did because I can always know that it's there, right? But moreover than that, I think the biggest issue with open water swimming is what I like to call the hurricane effect. Is as soon as something negative happens, another negative thing happens, and then another negative thing happens. And then all of a sudden you kind of put yourself into this panic mode and nothing's good and all is bad and blah, da, 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 da. And all of a sudden you freeze up and then you can't breathe and this, that, and the other, right? And sadly enough, well, I guess less than sadly enough, the most exciting thing, I guess, in this point is it all comes from one place. And that is how you prepare yourself for that swim the 5 minutes before you get in that water. I guarantee you, if you're afraid of swimming, and if you have this fear complex, and if these anxieties do affect you, the 5 minutes before you get in the water, you're most likely breathing through your shoulders. Okay, let me say that one more time. If you're afraid and you have this fear complex, you are most likely spending the 5 minutes before you get in the water breathing through your shoulders and your chest. Okay, I say that for a reason, and that is a natural physiological response to perceived threats or fear. When we are facing a situation that we're scared of or that's perceived as a threat, we go into that flight, fight, or freeze response. Our body goes into a stress response. The most important thing you can do in this moment is mitigate that stress response, because it's the stress response that is causing the cortisol to be released, that is causing this state, or this mental and physical state, that's not helpful for open water swimming. It keeps you tight. It keeps all your muscles in the wrong in the wrong state. Your mind goes in the wrong place, and all of a sudden it just goes down and down and down from there, right? So what can you do? Well, the fact is, our breath goes to our shoulders. When you are relaxed, though, when you're chill, cool, calm, collective, when you're not in the stress response, you are most likely breathing through your stomach. You're breathing with your diaphragm rather than your shoulders. So I just want to point this out to everyone. If you find yourself breathing through your shoulders, if your shoulders are going up and down, if your chest is heaving up and down when you're breathing, take an eye on it, right? Put one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest. If your chest hand is moving, I want you to switch it, and I want you to put, deliberately breathe through your stomach. Allow your diaphragm to drop, and do that for 5 minutes. And train yourself to respond in these situations with a deep, relaxing breath, rather than, the negative, ineffective shoulder breath. Okay, so the whole point of all of this is really to set our body up for success and our mind up for success. When we breathe through our shoulders, we're only oxygenating about a cup of blood per breath. Okay, let me say that again. When we breathe through our shoulders, when we have this stress response, this fear response, we're only oxygenating about a cup of blood per breath. When we breathe through our belly, when we breathe through our diaphragm and our stomach, we're oxygenating about a liter of blood per breath. What is oxygen, Sally, to performance? What is oxygen to calm, cool, collective swimming, to confidence, to motivation? What is oxygen?
Absolutely crucial.
Precisely. It's the key component, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
if you, I mean, and this is the biggest problem, is people don't mitigate their stress response. They don't do anything with it. They know they're freaking out, but they don't do anything about it. They have butterflies and they're crapping their pants, before the race day. And I did it too. I honestly, I will say it. I found myself in the stress response so freaking often. I was pissed because I was like, I'm the guy who should know how to do this, right? But it took like 5 races, specifically the half Ironman races, to mitigate and to train myself to respond with a belly breath rather than this chest breath, right? And I kept finding myself, even my Ironman race, right? I would check it every once in a while, and I would find myself like breathing through my chest. And I would know that I was in a stress response at that point in time. And then I would do something about it. I'd start breathing through my stomach, and then I'd relax, and then my muscles would relax. Man, I had the greatest race of my life in the water at Coeur d'Alene, Idaho this last year. That was my Ironman race. And I did my first 500 meters of that race the slowest I've ever done it in my life. And I did it on purpose. And that is because I knew that if I entered that water trying to go hard and really energetically, right, and really fast, that I would be setting myself up for failure because of all this experience I had before, right?
Right.
So if I'm gonna say one thing to this whole point, I'm gonna ask you to simply breathe, but breathe on purpose. Breathe for a reason, and do it for the first, the 5 minutes before you get in the water, and then face it, and then go get in that water, and continue to try to breathe through your stomach, even while you're in the water. Breathe slowly, breathe on purpose, breathe fully. That way you're setting your body up and your mind up for success, because when your oxygen is there, when your body is in a good positive place or a helpful place that has enough of all of its resources, then you're going to end up being able to support yourself a lot better, and you're going to have a lot better experience, to say the least. So there is so much more that goes into this, but that would be the one thing that I think would help everybody.
Okay. That's great. And the breathing thing, I mean, that again, here we go again. That's another thing you can work on, but it's something that you can work on within your training. So within your swim workout, when you're at the pool swimming, or before you get in the pool, try to practice relaxing and think about that breathing that Nate's talking about. Yeah, you may not be nervous about your swim, but maybe a big swim, one of our big swim classes, you get kind of nervous. I don't know. It's a good time to practice there. Even when you're just sitting at your computer at work, practice breathing into your belly. It's kind of a yoga thing, but it works. We have, and I'm sure Nate can offer this too. I haven't really talked about everything that Nate can do, but I have a person who's a specialist on breathing exercises and that type of thing, specifically for athletes. So we might look into having a class here in St. Louis, but also having kind of a workout in Training Peaks where you work on your breathing, and it's not for very long. It could just take a few minutes a couple times a week just to think about it, and help yourself relax. And it could help you in any of the disciplines too. So I really like that.
Practice when you go to sleep. This is a great opportunity because your mind's racing. Most of the times, if you have a hard time sleeping or you have that racing thought issue, turn off all the lights in the room, and I want you to practice simply breathing and work on breathing for 10 minutes. Interestingly enough, if you focus on your breath, Slow, deep, deliberate belly breaths. Maybe, again, put one hand on your chest, one hand on your stomach, and allow that hand on your stomach to rise and fall, and focus in on that and put all of your attention on that. You're going to find yourself falling asleep within 2 to 5 minutes. It's the weirdest thing in the world, but it's the same technique that I use before for every race day, or every race, or the day before every race, night before every race. I always go through that same thing because I find myself like not being able to sleep, and a lot of people do, because you're so worried or you're anxious. Well, rather than focusing on all the anxious stuff and all the stuff that's making you anxious and all the racing thoughts, control where you put your thoughts. Put your attention on your breath, because your breath is something you can control, and practice that on a nightly basis. This is something I did for actually 2 or 3 months, in order to kind of develop a little bit more acuity and a little bit more skill within it. But it is so helpful to fall asleep, and it's really cool to practice that when you fall asleep. That way you can utilize it in the future.
Okay, we'll do that. And I don't know about you all, but I was just practicing it while he was talking.
That's awesome.
I was. I'm sure everybody else was doing the same thing, right? So, okay, so let's go on to the next type of athlete, which is overly competitive. And this got a little overlap too. I thought I went in and fixed this, but I know I did. Overly competitive. So just knowing that you can't always be the fastest. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the presentation. The people who come out to the workout and they can't just, this is their zone 2 day, but oh my gosh, there's no way because Peter's over there and they know they're faster than Peter. So they have to go ride with the A group and, prove to Peter that they're faster. And I'm not saying just guys, there are definitely girls that do this too, but stop driving yourself crazy. Stick to your plan. There's a purpose for every workout. And yeah, sometimes the purpose will be, I will actually put in the description, hang with the faster group. And that's when you're going to push yourself and you're going to try to stay ahead of Peter. And that's fine, but not every single time, right? Because it's really not. And I love this slide. Jennifer has a slide in here. Nate can't see the slides right now, but it's a little kid running, and it says, there is always the one kid who thinks PE is the Olympics. Calm the fuck down. So really, I mean, it taking each workout for what the purpose is, and trying not to worry so much about that, because Peter really doesn't care that you might be faster than him, right? Nate, you want to talk about the overly competitive athlete?
Oh man. Okay, for the time, I've only got about 5 more minutes here.
I know. So we'll make these last two kind of quick.
No worries. So I'm gonna say this: it's okay to be competitive. It's not okay to be comparative. It's okay to be competitive. It's not okay to be comparative. If you find yourself comparing yourself to other people, that doesn't help anything or anybody. I mean, really, honestly. I mean, think about that for a second. Have you ever compared yourself to other people and had it come out in a good outcome, like in any way, shape, or form? It's like that. It's such crap, but it's something that we get from our society and the way that we're raised and the way that our society is structured, and it's something that you need to stop doing. I'm going to say that on purpose, and it's just the same thing. If you find yourself in a negative place, again, that's okay. If you find yourself comparing yourself, that's okay. It's not okay to stay there, though, right? You have to learn, and you have to be aware of things that are hurting you. This is one thing that's going to hurt everybody. And it especially is actually facilitated with social media. It's facilitated with Instagram. It's facilitated with Strava. It's the comparisons I'm talking about here, right? Yeah. All of this stuff, that we engage in on a daily basis is facilitating more comparison. And I will promise you, the more you engage in it, the less you will have fun, the less you will perform well, and the more stress that you're going to have in training and in competition. It's just a fact. That seems such a big statement. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to really describe what I'm saying here, but I hope you guys understand that comparisons don't help you. And if you find yourself in a comparative mindset, then change it. Change it to refocus on yourself, on what you're working on, what you're developing, on what your purpose is for that day, rather than, I'm going to beat him, or I need to beat her, or I've got to go faster, I've got to show him, or that's crap. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
So don't do it. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, and this next slide
Wow,
is
you are testing me here to actually like clarity of thought. This is impressive. Wow.
I'm putting a time limit on your talking. So the next one is really the same thing. It's comparing yourself to others. You suck. It's how far have you come? When did you start? Be proud. So we kind of already talked about those things, but yeah, that's really basically the last slide. So I just wanted to thank you so much, Nate, for being a part of this webinar, and really look forward to working with you as a resource for our group. I have a great group of clients. I also have a triathlon club that would benefit from your expertise. And again, just to have another resource, we have our chiropractors, we have our physical therapists, we have a lot of different resources. And I feel like this was kind of one that would be very, very valuable to have in our toolbox, is someone like you who can kind of coach us a little bit further on this piece that is so powerful and such a big part of success or failure in racing and training. So if you want to close with anything, feel free. This is the last slide.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the partnership, I just want everyone to understand and know that everybody gets a free first initial session with me, and you can sign up for that on my website. It's under the training page at mentalgritconsulting.com. You've got a free session with me. So even if you have questions, come ask them. That's what I'm here for. We can develop a little bit more of a working relationship and allow us to actually answer some of your individualized specific questions, because this stuff, there's no specific program that I can give anybody that's one off. Everybody's individual, so I'll be able to kind of approach it for you and what you want to get out of it. But I just want to make this stuff available. That's what we're trying to do. So it's available to Olympians, it's available to elite professional athletes. Like, why the heck is it not available to younger or youth athletes, or developmental athletes and triathlon? Even at the beginner and intermediate levels, this stuff is even more important, if you ask me, than it is at the elite levels. So, I mean, with that being said, I'm going to kind of leave it at that. You can follow me on Facebook. You can jump on Instagram, talking about those social media resources. But instead of really combating those social media, it's here to stay. I know it is, but hopefully these social media platforms will allow you to engage in things that are helpful rather than the comparisons assets that are out there. So yeah, jump on social media, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. I am on Twitter. I don't use it a lot though. But then, take advantage of that free session. Jump on, sign up for a free session with me, and we can kind of take it from there. But Sally, thank you for your partnership. Thank you for the time that you've spent today, and thank you to everybody who's listening today. If you have any questions, again, you can get in touch with me via you can call or text me too. 801-368-7564. You give me a call or throw me a text, and I'd answer any of your questions. So.
Thank you. We have everything on this slide, and I'll kind of talk to people too about, like we said, any specific topic on here we could do a whole presentation on. So we have, like I said, we have common themes depending on the season, depending on the group. So you might hear from me in this format too. I think this was a lot of fun.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to skedaddle. I've got to jump in with a client. So.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. Take care. Have a great day.
Guys. See you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so one more slide. This is just a list of some of the things that we have coming up in our world. The youth and junior, another information session is this Sunday at Nutriformance from 1 to 3-ish. And I'd highly recommend it if you have kids, or forward this information to someone who might have kids that would be interested in any level of triathlon, from beginner to elite. And then we have a Santa hat run on Christmas Eve at 8 a.m. Bring a Santa hat if you have it. It's free. We'll have snacks and stuff afterwards. Gravel for the love of it. This is a event that Wendy Davis, our mountain bike and gravel coach, is putting on. So it's a casual gravel ride. And it goes to a great charity. Injury prevention with Lauren Hendricks. She's done this before for us, and it was a lot of fun. So here she wants to go to the Crafty Chameleon, which is a great little beer place in Ellisville. Then we have a Triathlon 101. I have not yet been to the Bike Stop Cafe, but I really look forward to spending some time there and talking to newbies if you know of anyone who might be interested in getting into the sport. And then I also am doing a half and full Ironman talk at the same place in February. So thank you all again for joining. Let me know if you think of any topics that you would like to hear about, and I can either do them on my own, or if I like to, I really enjoyed pulling in a specialist for this one because it is such a big topic. But again, thank you so much. And please feel free to email or send me a Facebook message if you have any questions at all. And feel free to contact Nate as well. Thank you. Have a great day.